Iran launches its largest coordinated naval assault in history against U.S. Gulf forces. And in 81 minutes, the Persian Gulf becomes the most contested body of water since World War II. Sunday, 10:44 p.m., the central Persian Gulf, 62 miles northeast of Bahrain. USS Theodore Roosevelt, a Nimitz-class carrier, 104,000 tons, 90 aircraft, 5,200 sailors, was recovering the last strike package of the evening watch when the threat picture changed on every screen simultaneously. Not one threat track, not a salvo of missiles from a single battery, an operational pattern, the kind that takes shape over 14 minutes before it becomes undeniable, that the Roosevelt's intelligence officer had been tracking since 10:30 p.m. and had flagged to the strike group commander at 10:38 p.m. as potentially indicative of a coordinated multi-domain attack in preparation. The strike group commander had ordered the formation to full battle stations at 10:41 p.m. The last FAA-18 was still in the wire when the Aegis combat systems aboard USS Normandy and USS Lady Gulf simultaneously generated hostile act alerts at 10:44 p.m. What the alerts were tracking, 61 IRGCN fast attack craft and missile boats departing 4 separate Gulf Coast ports simultaneously. 11 Shahab-3 ballistic missiles in terminal boost phase from mobile launchers in Khuzestan province. 32 Shahed 238 jet-powered loitering munitions crossing the Iranian coast on 6 separate bearing lines. 4 IRGCN midget submarines, Ghadir class, 120 tons, carrying 2 heavyweight torpedoes each, whose positions had been sporadically tracked for the preceding 6 hours, and whose last known locations placed all 4 within 40 kilometers of the Roosevelt formation. And one element that appeared on no radar screen and no sonar display, a previously unknown IRGCN shore-based anti-ship ballistic missile battery on the Qeshm Island Peninsula that activated its fire control radar at 10:44:31 p.m. and began tracking the Roosevelt's radar cross-section from 81 kilometers. 61 surface vessels, 11 ballistic missiles, 32 drones, 4 submarines, 1 previously uncharacterized shore battery, 5 simultaneous threat streams designed around a single operational theory that the combined cognitive and computational load of 5 simultaneous attack vectors would exceed the processing capacity of any Aegis battle group's threat prioritization algorithm and produce a window, measured in seconds, where 1 or more weapons would find the defense cycling between engagements rather than tracking them. The theory was correct in principle. The execution was catastrophic in practice. What's your assessment? Type A if you believe the 5-domain simultaneous attack was the correct operational concept, but failed due to IRGCN coordination and timing gaps in execution. Type C if you believe no attack architecture Iran could realistically execute could saturate a full carrier strike group's Aegis network, operating at full battle stations alert. Drop your full tactical analysis in the comments. The Aegis combat system's response to 5 simultaneous threat streams is not a human decision process. It is an algorithm. Threat prioritization computed against 27 variables, including target bearing, closing velocity, altitude, radar cross-section, classification confidence, and estimated time to weapons effect on the defended asset. The algorithm runs in 0.4 seconds per threat track update. The 11 ballistic missiles received the highest priority classification, ballistic missile, terminal phase, high confidence, time to impact between 4.2 and 6.8 minutes. The Aegis system on USS Normandy assigned intercept missiles to each track before the Roosevelt Strike Group commander had completed his first threat summary sentence to his executive officer. SM-3 Block 2IA missiles launched from Normandy's vertical launch system at 10:45:17 p.m., 93 seconds after the first ballistic missiles were detected in boost phase. 8 missiles for 11 inbound tracks. The SM-3 Block 2IA engages in the mid-course phase, above the atmosphere, where the geometry is clean and the closing velocity is nearly 7 kilometers per second. 9 kills confirmed. 2 missiles evaded the SM-3 intercept and entered terminal phase over the Gulf. Lady Gulf's SM-6 missiles, already computed and waiting for the SM-3 to clear the engagement geometry, fired at 10:51 p.m. both terminal phase missiles intercepted at 42 kilometers from the formation. All 11 ballistic missiles killed before any reached the 30-kilometer engagement envelope. Subscribe and hit the bell. This is the operational depth you get here every week. The 32 Shahed 238 drones arrived in 2 waves. First wave of 19, approaching from the northeast on bearings pre-designed to stress the sector transition zones of the formation's outer defense envelope. The same approach geometry that had damaged USS Carney in a previous engagement, refined and expanded from 2 aircraft to 19. CRAM launchers on 5 ships in the formation engaged simultaneously. The electronic warfare suites on 3 ships activated ANSLQ-32, jamming at full power across the primary Shahed 238 guidance frequency bands. 14 drones were killed by CRAM intercept. 4 were jammed into erratic terminal trajectories that took them away from the formation. 1 found the seam between USS Bunker Hill's sector transition and the Roosevelt's own point defense geometry, a 1.3-second window where neither system had tracking priority, and struck the Roosevelt's aft flight deck elevator housing at 10:53 p.m. Its 18-kilogram warhead detonated against the elevator's hydraulic mechanism housing. The elevator was destroyed. No aircraft were on it at the time. The fire that followed was contained in 11 minutes by the Roosevelt's damage control team. No sailors were killed. The ship remained fully operational. The second Shahed wave of 13 drones arrived 4 minutes after the first, timed to catch the formation's CRAM systems reloading after the first engagement. 3 ships had partially depleted their CRAM-ready magazines. The timing was precise. It was not precise enough. The Phalanx CIWS systems, which CRAM supplements rather than replaces, were fully loaded and had been tracking the second wave's approach since the first wave's terminal phase. 9 drones were killed by Phalanx. 3 were killed by CRAM from ships whose magazines had not been depleted in the first engagement. 1 was decoyed by a Nulka active missile decoy, a floating electronic warfare device launched from USS Lady Gulf that generated a false radar signature more attractive to the Shahed's electro-optical terminal seeker than the Lady Gulf's actual hull. The decoy absorbed the drone at 200 meters off the Lady Gulf's port beam. The second drone wave produced 0 hits on U.S. warships. The 61 IRGCN surface vessels were the element that the Roosevelt Strike Group commander had been most prepared to address. Not because the surface threat was most dangerous, but because the P-8 Poseidon that had been orbiting the Gulf since 8:00 p.m. had been tracking the departing vessels since they left port and had been feeding continuous targeting data to the Roosevelt's Combat Direction Center since 10:44 p.m. When the Aegis Hostile Act alerts triggered, the surface picture was already complete. 61 vessels, their positions, headings, and speeds known to within 50 meters in 3 knots. The Strike Group commander authorized offensive action against all 61 at 10:46 p.m., 2 minutes after the Hostile Act alert. The first response was airborne. 16 FA-18E and FA-18F Super Hornets that had been spotted on the Roosevelt's flight deck in combat-ready configuration since 10:41 p.m., when the Strike Group commander ordered full battle stations on the intelligence officer's assessment. Launched in under 4 minutes. Each aircraft carried 4 AGM-84L Harpoon Block II anti-ship missiles and 2 AIM-120D AMRAAMs for self-protection. 64 Harpoons from 16 aircraft against 61 surface vessels. The targeting was not random. The P-8's continuous surface track had identified and prioritized the 11 Peykaap-class missile boats, the vessels carrying C-802 anti-ship missiles capable of threatening U.S. warships, as the primary engagement targets. The remaining 50 fast attack craft, armed with rockets, machine guns, and Tufan anti-tank missiles, were dangerous to small vessels, but could not threaten Arleigh Burke destroyers or the Roosevelt directly. Eliminate the Peykaps first. The fast attack craft would be addressed by the destroyer's own close-in weapons. The Harpoon engagement ran from 10:52 to 10:58 p.m. All 11 Peykaap vessels were targeted with between 4 and 6 missiles each. 9 were destroyed, 2 suffered mission kills, propulsion disabled, unable to maneuver or fire, but remained afloat. Of the remaining 50 fast attack craft, 22 were caught by the destroyer's 5-inch deck guns and Harpoon missiles from additional aircraft sorties launched at 10:56 p.m. as the first wave recovered. The other 28 turned north and accelerated toward the Iranian coast at maximum speed when the Peykaap engagement began. They were pursued by 2 Arleigh Burke destroyers and 18 additional FA-18s for 47 minutes before entering territorial waters where the rules of engagement required termination of the pursuit. 14 of the 28 fleeing vessels were sunk or disabled before reaching the 12 nautical mile boundary. 14 reached Iranian coastal waters. What would you have ordered as the IRGCN naval commander at 11:08 p.m.? With 9 Peykaap missile boats destroyed, 22 fast attack craft sunk or disabled, the ballistic missile salvo killed in its entirety, both drone waves absorbed with 1 hit on a flight deck elevator, and 14 surviving fast attack craft entering Iranian waters with no weapons remaining? Commit the 3 Kilo-class submarines whose positions were last tracked 6 hours ago to attempt torpedo attacks on the carrier? Stand down and accept the engagement outcome? Or order the Qeshm Island shore battery, which has been tracking the Roosevelt for 24 minutes, to fire its remaining missiles as a final salvo before the battery is targeted? Leave your decision in the comments. The Qeshm Island shore battery had been tracking the Roosevelt since 10:44:31 p.m. 17 minutes of continuous tracking before the IRGCN naval commander's situation deteriorated to the point where the shore battery represented the last remaining offensive option with the reach to threaten the carrier. The battery fired at 11:01 p.m., 17 minutes and 29 seconds after it activated its fire control radar. 4 Khalij-Fares anti-ship ballistic missiles. The battery commander had waited too long. The 17 minutes of continuous fire control radar emission had been tracked by 2 EA-18G Growler electronic warfare aircraft that had been airborne since the full battle stations order and had been building a radar emission profile on the Qeshm battery since its first transmission. At 10:58 p.m., 3 minutes before the battery fired, the EA-18G crew had transmitted target coordinates to a flight of 2 FA-18Es carrying AGM-88E advanced anti-radiation guided missiles. The AAR-GMER is the successor to the Standard Harm, longer range, better seeker, capable of continuing to the target's last known position, even if the emitter shuts down. The 2 FA-18Es had been flying inbound since the coordinates were transmitted. They released their AAR-GMERs at 10:59:44 p.m., 1 minute and 16 seconds before the Qeshm battery fired. The 4 Khalij-Fares missiles cleared the battery at 11:01 p.m. The 4 AAR-GMERs impacted the battery's radar and launcher vehicles at 11:01:31 p.m., 31 seconds after the last Khalij-Fares launched. The battery was destroyed as its final salvo was in flight, unable to generate targeting updates for the missiles already airborne. The Khalij-Fares missiles flew their terminal approach without updated seeker guidance, targeting the Roosevelt's last transmitted radar cross-section position rather than its actual position at time of impact. The Roosevelt was no longer at that position. Standard carrier maneuvering protocols had moved the ship 1.8 kilometers from its 10:44 p.m. coordinates during the 17 minutes of the engagement. All 4 Khalij-Fares missiles impacted the water between 400 and 1,800 meters from the Roosevelt's actual position at 11:03 p.m. The detonations generated enough spray to wet the flight deck at 400 meters. No structural damage, no casualties. The 4 Ghadir midget submarines, the threat that had generated the most operational anxiety in the pre-engagement assessment, were resolved over the following 9 hours rather than the 81 minutes of the surface and air engagement. 2 were located by MH-60R Seahawk helicopters deploying sonobuoy barriers east of the formation at 1:30 a.m. Both were surfaced by underwater detonation of Mk-54 lightweight torpedoes at distances calculated to produce structural shock without catastrophic flooding, the specific technique for forcing a submarine to surface without killing its crew. Both Ghadirs surfaced. Their crews were transferred to Iranian Coast Guard vessels under the ceasefire framework that had already been transmitted by Iranian political leadership at 11:44 p.m., 43 minutes after the last Khalij-Fares impacted the water. The other 2 Ghadir submarines were located 4 and 7 days later, running on minimal battery power in shallow Gulf waters. Both were similarly surfaced. Neither had fired a torpedo. Their torpedo approach geometry had never aligned with a U.S. warship position in the 81 minutes of the battle. The formation's maneuvering protocols, continuously executed since 10:41 p.m., had kept every vessel outside the predictable torpedo intercept solution that Ghadir crews needed to achieve a valid firing position. The 81 minutes of the engagement produced a tactical accounting that required 4 separate post-incident reports to fully capture. 1 Roosevelt flight deck elevator destroyed, 14 days repair. 1 Shahed 238 impact. 0 sailors killed aboard any U.S. vessel, 11 ballistic missiles killed, 32 drones engaged, 1 hit, 9 Peykaap missile boats destroyed, 22 fast attack craft destroyed or disabled, 1 shore battery destroyed, 4 Ghadir submarines captured, 14 fast attack craft escaped. IRGCN surface fleet in the Central Gulf, functionally eliminated for operational planning purposes. U.S. carrier strike group, combat effective, flight operations resuming 22 hours after the elevator repair was completed. The Iranian ceasefire request transmitted at 11:44 p.m. came 43 minutes after the Roosevelt engagement peak, faster than any previous Iranian political response to a military engagement. The speed was not panic, it was calculation. The IRGCN naval commander had committed his maximum available naval force in the Central Gulf in a single coordinated operation and had produced 1 damaged elevator on a carrier whose air wing was already flying combat sorties again before midnight. The calculation was transparent. The operation had been the maximum Iran could sustain with its existing Gulf naval inventory. It had not been enough. Further operations would require assets currently positioned in the Gulf of Oman, in the Strait of Hormuz. Assets whose commitment would leave Iranian coastal approaches undefended against the American response that was certainly already being planned. The ceasefire was not a surrender. It was a recognition that the remaining Iranian naval assets were worth more as a surviving deterrent than as the next day's engagement losses. The 81 minutes changed the Persian Gulf's operational geography in ways that a ceasefire could not reverse. The IRGCN's Central Gulf Fast Attack Boat Network, built over 14 years representing the primary Iranian asymmetric naval capability against U.S. carrier operations, had been reduced to 14 surviving vessels of uncertain operational status in Iranian territorial waters. The Qeshm Island shore battery had been destroyed. The 4 Ghadir submarines were in U.S. custody. The ballistic missile battery, whose location had been unknown before 10:44 p.m., was now on every targeting list in CENTCOM's operational database. What the ceasefire preserved was the surviving fleet assets in the Gulf of Oman and Hormuz. Enough for Iran to claim it retained a naval deterrent, not enough for any serious military planner to assess that deterrent as capable of the coordination that 81 minutes of Gulf engagement had just demonstrated it could not achieve even against a single carrier strike group at full battle stations. The 5-domain attack theory, simultaneous surface, air, ballistic, submarine, and shore battery threats exceeding Aegis processing capacity, was not disproven by the engagement. It was not proven either. What the engagement demonstrated was the gap between a theory computed against isolated system performance and a theory tested against a battle group that had been at full battle stations for 3 minutes before the first threat alert triggered, whose commander had ordered aircraft to the flight deck based on pattern analysis 14 minutes before the engagement began, and whose network threat picture was shared in real time across 7 ships and 4 airborne platforms before the first Iranian vessel cleared its harbor entrance. The theory needed surprise. It did not get it. The intelligence officer who flagged the developing pattern at 10:38 p.m., 6 minutes before the hostile act alerts triggered, and the strike group commander who ordered full battle stations 3 minutes later on the strength of that assessment. Those 2 decisions produced the 3 minutes of preparation time that changed the outcome of 81 minutes of combat. 3 minutes. 1 flight deck elevator. 0 deaths. The accounting is that simple and that precise. Everything else was weapons and algorithms and geometry, resolving the way weapons and algorithms and geometry resolve when both sides are doing exactly what they were designed to do. The 3 minutes of preparation decided which side's design performed closer to its limits. The Roosevelt's flight deck elevator was operational again on day 14. The 81 minutes were over in the records. The Gulf remained contested. The 4 Ghadir crews were released in a prisoner exchange 31 days after the ceasefire. The 14 surviving fast attack craft were observed in Bandar Abbas harbor for the next 4 months, never leaving port. The Persian Gulf's balance of naval power had not been permanently resolved by 81 minutes. It had been clarified in numbers, in capabilities, in the gap between what Iran could plan and what it could execute, and in the 3 minutes of preparation time that sits between those two things like a wall. Did Iran's 5-domain attack fail because the concept was flawed, or because the battle group had 3 minutes of preparation that the theory required eliminating? What does the Ghadir paralysis, 4 submarines, 0 torpedoes, reveal about the gap between capability on paper and firing solution geometry against a formation, maneuvering continuously? And does the 43-minute ceasefire request represent genuine de-escalation or a pause before the Gulf of Oman fleet is committed? Like this video if this breakdown is the level of analysis you came here for. Subscribe, hit the bell, and leave your tactical read on the 81 minutes in the comments. The next scenario is already being built. One number from the Qeshm Island battery belongs in every targeting course: 17 minutes and 29 seconds. The gap between first radar emission and first missile launch. The battery commander chose tracking quality over timing. AAR GMERs launched at minute 15 and impacted at minute 17. 31 seconds after the last Khalij FARs left the launcher, the battery was destroyed, unable to send guidance updates to missiles targeting a carrier 1.8 kilometers from the locked position. The tracking quality was excellent. The timing was fatal. 17 minutes of continuous emission was the entire operational life of a capability that had taken years to build and had never appeared on any targeting list, until it activated and stayed on long enough to be found, fixed, and finished before its own missiles landed.